Everyone knows you should never take a physicist to a sci-fi movie. The same can be said about a biologist and a creature feature. We can point out how certain things are biologically unlikely or downright impossible, but that would be boring. So rather than pointing out what can't happen, why not ask ourselves, what if it was real? So using my super nerd levels of knowledge about biology, physics, and mythical creatures, my friends and I will explore how different creatures could have actually evolved on our planet and what they potentially would look like. Hello there, audience. Welcome back to A Real Creature Feature. This is Mac.
I'm Mike.
This is Dean.
Okay. Today we're gonna be doing our second part of our mermaid talk. I did a lot more like random research for this one,
Okay.
and I wanted. So let's start off with this one. What do we want this particular mammalian-based mermaid to look like? That it has like an actual finned tail, or would we prefer having like webbed fingers or webbed toes?
Ooh. So are we saying that we're gonna try and go more of Shape of Water?
Yeah, well, it's a thing too, because it all depends on how where we start with this will for like evolutionary purposes, because things that look drastically different, more time
Mhm.
has to go. But because this is something that I thought that was really interesting that I want to make sure to bring up. So in the book Life as We Made It by Beth Shapiro, she was talking about like cloning mammoths and how really hard that would be, and they were like talking about they could do stuff with like Asian elephants and everything else like that, and like basically alter the DNA of an Asian elephant to basically reverse engineer a mammoth.
Mhm.
And but it was really interesting because there she said that evolutionarily speaking, the difference between a mammoth and an Asian elephant is about 5 million years of separation.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, and look at what a mammoth looks like compared to an elephant.
Mhm.
You would still think they're in the same ballpark, which that expression doesn't really make sense. But oh
Yeah.
well. So if we have it that they only have hands and they have webbed hands and feet, it could be that it's closer to a common ancestor with us as compared to if we have it that it has a fish tail. Well, not a fish tail, but like
Hmm.
a dolphin-like tail. That would
Yeah.
be even further back.
Well, here's the thing with again with that book, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals,
Hmm.
like I was talking about in the last week, the whole thing is um it's this thing of we as mammals had left the water. Like that was our thing. We had left. We were very small creatures during the dinosaur times, and that's part of what also helped us survive the asteroid. We
Yes.
were smaller, we had places we could hide, we were better off at being able to also our food sources were less limited
Yes.
than the dinosaurs were. So we had the ability to scavenge better, and
Yeah.
that's what helped us do well. At some point down the evolutionary line, obviously, to get to the whales, we had to go back to the water.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, obviously, at that point, however long ago that was that we decided, maybe the water's the better place for some of us.
Hmm.
Um, how did they end up going to essentially looking very fish-like?
I do have so it's actually really oh,
They
I
were
guess
elephants that decided to swim.
kind of, yes. Well, no, actually no, 100% wrong.
What?
Yeah,
I thought
no,
they were along the lines of
no. Manatees and dugongs are. Whales
oh.
are more closely related to what was it? Cows,
Hmm.
I want to say.
So the
Give me a second. I made sure to uh bring this all together. I have a bunch of like evolutionary trees.
all the trees.
Cows, sheep, are in the probably same family as uh, whales and dolphins,
Yeah.
and then
Oh,
dogs and cats. Well, dogs are more closely related to walruses than cats, and then yeah,
interesting.
elephants and manatees are pretty close together.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's actually so I found this cool YouTube channel. It's called Moth Light Media, and basically there's a bunch of like different videos of like the evolution of and it was really neat because so when you look, so you think of a whale. What happened was it slowly grew out its tail, and it
Mm-hmm.
became more flat and more fin-like, and then basically lost its legs. As compared to a seal, which doesn't have a tail, it just has or but it has flippered feet that kind of they aren't really fused together, but like I think of more like a sleeping bag
Okay.
where it's not like fused together.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's that's new and interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the evolutionary tree of everything, and you're just like, ugh. I do want to look at this though. I want to make sure. Seal skeleton. And it was really neat because then I was also looking into otters, and the otter style of swimming is also very similar to like whales, like where they use their whole body kind of undulate, where seals only used their feet, not their tail.
Hmm.
Oh, scared.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of
Okay,
YouTube
yeah,
videos out
so
there
yeah,
of
there
otters
are
swimming.
yeah, there are definitely very distinct bones that are the legs are, but like it's very stunted legs. So yeah, eventually probably will have evolved something more like uh, a dolphin if the evolutionary pressures push it in that way. Because right now it is a terrestrial aquatic creature as compared to a dolphin, which is only aquatic.
Mm-hmm.
But then like an otter is more terrestrial because it can actually move around way easier on land. But the cool thing about I learned this about seals was that they also have a really flexible spine. So there's thought that they were able to go into a particular niche, evolutionarily speaking, because they were able to eat all the food that the dolphins couldn't eat
Oh,
because they're a lot more flexible and they could get to slower, more nimble creatures, where dolphins went for bigger, fast creatures.
okay.
And then I learned this too, that there are because of the introduction of the seal two or this like the overarching seals, because there's a lot of different seals. There's also false seals. I can't remember which one's which. I think it false seals have ears and normal seals don't, because it doesn't matter as much to this particular topic of what is what. But there's a huge chunk of like divergent evolution because of like the introduction of those particular mammals, because then you start seeing a change in animal behavior where you would have like these you that's when you start seeing like great white sharks starting to develop, and orcas, because those things more specialize on hunting seals. And you're like, oh, so that whole genetic arms race, when they ever talk about evolution, it's like it's really interesting because yeah, it's chicken or the egg all over
Yeah.
again. But it's like, so did this happen this way or this? It's just really confusing because once again, we're like, we don't have we don't have a complete fossil record for every animal out there, because how are you going to dig up stuff that was on the bottom of the ocean and has stayed on the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, and some of it's oil now.
Yeah, or how do you get a fossil record for something that doesn't have bones?
Yeah. Well, it's going back to my Permian Basin days. In Odessa, they have actually an oil field museum,
Mhm.
and a part of it is showing what the Permian Basin looked like 60 million years ago, where it was a giant coral part of the ocean. And it was this whole section of it, this area was just filled with coral. All of the animals that got trapped as things were like adjusting and changing out there way too quickly for them to be able to move. Yeah, so it was really interesting just to see because they have like this entire display of almost like a I'm gonna call
Yeah.
it a diorama of what
Uh,
they
yeah.
would think the area would have looked like. And it's just this very heavy like coral basin with just surrounded by water and cool looking like, Loch Ness monster type characters in there.
Plesiosaur. Oh, that was because that was one of the things that they talked about. Like a plesiosaur is an example of very similar locomotion uh, of like a seal, where they use their fins for
Yeah.
locomotion rather than like a big tail.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes sense.
And once again, I don't know why I can't say the word walrus.
Yeah.
They're also very unique because they use all their limbs for swimming rather than
Yeah.
again like a whale where it uses its big tail to push it forward and maybe the front fins to like help maneuver.
Yeah.
Seals using their back legs more, but a walrus uses all their limbs for swimming.
Yeah. So I mean,
Uh,
obviously, then by the sound of it, if we're gonna have a humanoid mermaid, it would have to be. It would almost have to be webbed hands and feet by the sound
yeah,
of it versus
yeah.
anything else, or else we'd end up with whales or
No,
something sim
what we would end up with is, because that's the thing about it too, is, like, the overall look.
Yeah.
You would have a simian-looking face if it's far enough back where you could kinda see a resemblance of a simian primate, but it wouldn't you wouldn't say, "Oh, yeah, that looks human." But,
Yeah.
I did want because I remember learning this, I got this from Scientific America. There are, people in, Southeast Asia that have, like they can hold their breath a really long time. I mean, like, 20 minutes.
That is a really long time.
And what happened is they have proof that it's, like, evolution because they actually look at their spleens, and their spleens are, so to grow plus-size spleens that may enhance their breath holding, capability, because that's what your spleen does is hold red blood cells.
Okay.
So if you
Yeah.
you can release more red blood cells, then you can have more oxygen in your blood, blah blah blah, all that other awesome stuff. But yeah, hold breaths in competitive settings for up to 3 to or close to 4.5 minutes. Oh no, this is like the world. Okay, wait. Among the the people are BAJAU, one group of people who live in the houseboats in the water area between the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Divers have been recorded holding their breaths. Oh, okay, I was wrong about the whole 20-minute thing.
Oh, jeez.
For over, I think it was on that TikTok. That's what it made it sound like it more,
Okay.
but like 5 minutes.
Still a long time.
Yeah, and, as my record is, like, over a minute of me not moving,
Mhm.
and these people are actively swimming deep in the water, looking for shellfish and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just nuts, and, yeah, their bodies have, evolved or, like, well,
Yeah.
mutated, and they're on the way to evolving to be very different looking than
Okay.
humans.
Wow.
If yeah,
Yeah.
given another million years, they would be fish people, maybe. Well,
Mhm.
not fish people, dolphin people.
Okay.
Good
Wow.
people.
So
And
so you're telling me that the Beijao could eventually, if they get to that point, they could?
yeah, it's one of those things. If humans didn't discover how to travel faster than just what our legs can do, we didn't cross the ocean blue in
Mhm.
1492. Um, we could have had like a lot of different branches of humans after a few thousand more years of not developing
Yeah.
any kind of technology.
So again, this goes back to the idea of why we ended up in with a lot of stronger upper bodies is because we did a lot of that construction work and less need for our legs to give us full locomotion over long distances. Because we had kind of beaten that one. We had kind of beaten that one by creating machines to do the work for us.
And that was the article. This one that I was reading in Scientific America is sea nomads may have evolved to be the world's elite divers. That's that particular
Ooh.
article. But there's also another like because I wanted to bring this up because it's very interesting and it deals with that whole what will drive something closer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said before, you're also trying to fit a particular niche, and if there's more of a need or more abundance of you to go deeper in the water, then you'd be able to fill that niche even better. So this is from the National Geographic. Meet the rare swimming wolves that eat seafood.
Hmm.
Basically, what happens is it was in somewhere in Canada. There are a bunch of wolves that are staying closer and closer to the water, and they're actually starting to eat like fish and everything else like that. And you're like, oh, that's not very weird or anything like that. But given enough time, they will become better and better adapted to that particular environment, and they will start looking more like seals potentially, or weird looking otters or anything else. Because like seals are fairly close to dogs in evolutionarily speaking, as compared to other animals. And so like that's how it goes. That's how it starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dolphins, they started out looking like, because like there's no like real like other animal, because they still have a very long nose and face,
Yeah.
but they are about the size of, I think it was like a large dog, and they had I think they didn't. I think it was right before they had hooves. That particular thing, because yeah, like I said, they're fairly close related to a lot of ruminants.
Hmm.
And then yeah, they just kept getting longer, and eventually either lost their feet and legs, or it just like they became so small that you can't really notice them. They're
Nice.
kind of goofy looking, and they're toothed. And it was kind of cool because I was also looking up, and they're talking about sperm whales. So sperm whales actually have only have, I guess, teeth on the lower part of their jaw.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was like, two sets of, like, top and bottom, because they're talking about their ancestor, and there is the ancestor of the sperm whale that has giant, like scary megalodon level teeth, and they're like not replaceable in the same way. So they're like, yeah, they're just fused to the jaw, and they think T-Rex
Yeah.
level size teeth,
Oof.
but
Wow.
that's too small.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're huge, and they were terrifying. And I'm like, this is why I wouldn't want to go in the water.
Oh.
But okay, okay, good.
I'd still take my chances. But anyway, so
But anyway, so okay, let's go back. We're gonna start around with when we are the hominids. Where did I put that? Did I make this bigger? Ancestors. Oh yeah, hominids. So basically, hominids are gorillas, baboons, chimpanzees, because it's hominidae. I can't
okay.
pronounce words. HOMINOIDAE, and that includes Homo sapiens, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and gibbons.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to have something that evolved looking somewhat human, that would be probably where we'd want it to start at. And yeah, like I said, it would probably have started off being closer to rivers, and like just slowly venturing out more in water, and they're like, and just slowly evolving to the point that it allowed them to get more and more into the water. And so that some of the big theories too were like, why would these creatures, like, go back in the water? It's like, well, an abundant food source, and also it's a great way to get away from a bunch of predators. So
Yeah.
for this, it would have to be some kind of more land-based predators that are, so there would have to be like no alligators or any kind of water-based predators there, really, to, because the evolution pressures would have to, why would I go into the water where there are a bunch of giant predators that want to eat me?
Yeah.
I'm
Makes
like,
sense.
I wouldn't want to do that. So like, you need to have a little give and take for some of this stuff,
Yeah.
and probably would be, but and so I think it's like gorillas, orangutans, and gibbons are probably, I'm pretty sure, are all herbivores.
Yeah.
Like I know definitely gorillas are definitely, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, orangutans, gibbons. So to have it that they can also have the whole developing a brain, so that they can also develop a society, because that's the whole premise of a lot of this too. Is, well, yeah, we could just have a fish monkey, cool, but how would they sing? I want to be where the people are.
Well,
They're not going to have any conversations like that.
I mean, well, then Dean was right about the sideshow mermaids then.
Well, yeah, yeah, 100%. There was, yeah,
Yeah.
there are documented cases of people literally sewing fish
Yeah.
to monkey
Yeah.
bodies.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, even then, like, so yeah, if they were going to sing about being a part of our world, it couldn't be straight up plain English. They'd have to have a language all their own,
Yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
whale song, you know?
Yeah, And once again, this is why I also wanted to have, like, depending on how far back things are, that's when you can actually have that it is very distinct and very niche put in, where this is like they're not niche yet.
Yeah.
They're getting there. They're targeting a particular niche and hoping that they get there and it
Yeah.
all works out. Because sad thing is sometimes, yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go with this niche and everything else. Oh wait, that niche is already filled, and now you die. Evolution, yay! Sometimes
Yeah.
you win, sometimes you lose.
Yeah. Well, we're always winning, baby. Top of the chain.
Woo! Because of cooperation.
Yeah.
That
Wait,
that
what?
is
That doesn't
No,
sound right.
that's not how Edgar Ryan says it.
No, that can't be right.
You,
Something's
you
wrong
gotta
here.
selfishly pull in your own direction, and it
Yeah.
strengthens the chain.
Yeah.
nope. It's cooperation. Since we started in cooperations and like started taking care of the weakest members of our society, I mean, this is like since forever before there's anything written down.
Oh,
Uh,
look at him pull out the Sid's Forever thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things like we don't have an exact date because I'm like you can see it in other primates too a lot of times where they'll like start taking care of sick uh other sick creatures rather than, leaving them to die.
Yeah.
But now I got distracted a little bit, obviously. So, uh so that's what, yeah, once again, it's one of those difficult points of like, if we have it too human like, then they wouldn't have developed like any kind of separateness, really, because they wouldn't have had time to develop that. But yeah, if we go too far back, they won't look all human like. They will,
Yeah.
what was it? If you put lipstick on a gorilla,
Well,
is
it'll be
that
the
it?
most beautiful gorilla in the savannah.
But yeah,
I know they
it's,
don't live in the savannah, but
yeah, I know. But yeah, it would be, but it would still be kind of cool.
yeah.
And the other thing too is like bringing this up too is so do you know what's the difference between blubber and normal fat?
That I do not. Dean? Oh,
Blubber you use to help steer yourself when you're underwater.
Steer yourself?
Steer yourself. Ballast.
Oh no,
ah.
blubber is fat, but the difference between like human fat and blubber is it's like more vascular. There's more blood vessels in there,
Mm.
and it's also a lot of times more dense, but yeah, rich with blood vessels than other adipose tissues. So being able
And
to probably help regulate heat and everything else, and it's a, well, like I said, it's a way thicker than normal fat or our normal fat to help with insulation too. So at one point, depending on where this particular creature is, which more likely would have to have started off in Africa for our purposes, um it would slow, like the longer it's been in the water, the more blubber it would need to stay warm. Because so this is always interesting too, like no matter what happens, you can get hypothermia in like any kind of pool eventually,
yeah.
unless it's like the water is literally 98.6, because
Oh.
eventually if you lower your core body temperature enough, you'll get hyperthermia. I can't remember the exact level of when that point is, but it's constantly sucking out that heat, and eventually you're gonna get cold no matter what.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
So no, that makes again, I mean that would make sense at some point if it's low enough
Mm.
that it doesn't maintain your core temperature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's just law of heat transference at that point.
Mhm. And then, well, then, like, if you compare, uh, whales or dolphins or, seals to otters, sea otters especially, sea otters don't have a lot of blubber on them. They went a different route to keep in their heat, and their fur, which is stupidly densely packed, like, per hair per square inch, like, I recently did learn this, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But like, compared to ours, is like it could be like somewhere around like 120 per square inch or something, and this is like in the thousands or something of
Yeah.
hairs. And so yeah,
Wow.
densely packed. It is super soft. Don't touch them, unless you're at a zoo and they say, "Oh, it's okay," but they'll probably bite you anyway, so don't do that. So there's two different routes that we could have. That it's like they our particular mammalian mermaid could either be like in and out of the water enough that they can keep their body temperature at an appropriate temperature, and they're in a warm environment, so they don't have to worry about that for too long. Or eventually they could develop like a blubber layer, and if that's going to also probably mean that they're going to be in the water for way longer than anything. And the same thing was like developing a thick hair layer, because
Mm-hmm.
I think hominids had probably hair at that point. I don't think it had fur. So it would possibly could go entirely different direction of like hair structure to keep themselves warm and insulated. But once again, it also depends on where they are.
Yeah.
Because yeah, if you're in a river in the middle of Africa, potentially that river is warm enough to be able to be in there a long time.
Yeah. But you're
Uh,
saying that in the case of so going back to, as we're gonna say, always go with the Little Mermaid scenario, Ariel would either have to have a thick layer of blubber
mhm.
or be very hairy.
Yes.
He'd be thick like the beluga.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that
Uh,
beautiful girl.
Dean shared another picture of a beluga. I don't know if that's a girl or boy.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, a lot of mammals, or actually a lot of aquatic animals in general. Yeah, can't
Yeah.
really tell.
Hey, thick with 3 C's.
You don't tell. Yes, they are. You
Yeah.
can't. You can't tell. You can't tell until it's too late. That's
Yes.
with
Yeah.
aquatic
Correct
mammals. You
yourself,
can't
huh?
tell till it's too late.
And it's also interesting because this particular picture of a beluga, it is a beluga sticking out of the water, so spitting at the audience, but you can still see all the muscles and everything
Yeah.
else, and those are muscles underneath a blubber layer.
Yeah.
So if you stripped off all that fat, they just think how jacked they would look.
Oh, man
Oof.
alive.
Yeah.
So do
They're
they?
ready.
So
Dean?
Oh, they're ready to go to war against the octopus overlords that are going to be trying to take over their gigantic cities underwater.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Nah,
That's canon.
you just have to
That's
wait
what's
5 years.
actually happening.
It's it's happening. It's war, baby.
Wait, so if they have octopus overlords, then didn't they? Doesn't that mean the octopi already won?
Yeah, but now the revolution begins.
Yeah, but that's because they're sneaky. You try and put them in jars, but they get out of the jars.
Uh, uh,
And they've got a neural cluster for each of their 8 arms, so they're all thinking independently.
they're a dangerous sort, them octopi.
Very much so.
Okay.
Oh, that's
So we've kind of determined a few things about, depending on again where the branch off occurs.
yes.
I know a lot of this is conjecture based off time. So
Yeah. Because that the coolest thing about, at least for this particular topic, unlike like a bunch of the other ones, is we actually can have so many different things to compare and contrast to. Because like we have all these animals that have decided I want to go back in the water. And we can see how they diverged, or they altered, or they changed, or they decided I'm going to go my own special path. One of my favorite animals, the platypus.
oh boy.
It was another one of those from once again plugging his thing, Mothlight Media. He had one about platypi, and it's really interesting. And they're like talking about how potentially some of that the evolution happened when Australia was closer to Antarctica, and it was a little bit cooler, more moist, and like more swamp like and everything else. And because of the particular niche that it filled, and filled so good, then when the what's the word, marsupials came, then they had their niche already figured out, so like they didn't have to compete with anything, because all the other species that also laid eggs like that, they died off. So that's why we only have echidnas and platypi left.
No,
Because
see, once again, you're missing the eternal war between platypi and kiwis,
Oh god.
and how the platypi drove them, like Saint
Patrick.
Patrick drove all the snaky kiwis off into New Zealand.
Okay. You you are just wanting to start fights with different animals. So
Yeah.
back to the mammalian, well, hominid mermaid, I guess would be
Yes.
the more proper language to use.
All right.
Okay. So we established that the closer it is to human in the like before it branched off, the more it would look like a human.
Hmm.
Uh, and but then also depending on the environment that it lives in, that's where you'd have a difference in overall appearance. Now, if it we did go all the way back where it did have like that dolphin tail again,
Okay.
like I said last week about the or last time about the other mermaid was, have you noticed something interesting about dolphin heads? Like the orientation of where they're looking.
Aren't they looking forward?
Yes. So the placement of the hole for where the spine goes in
Mm-hmm.
is more on the back of their like where our back of the head would be. So there will be so like you wouldn't be able to look at something chest to chest because
Yeah.
it wouldn't really look at you all that well. Now dolphins do have a more flexible head. Same thing with the beluga whale, which we have an image of, but
Mm-hmm.
it would still have that weird flop. So unless it had a longer spine
Mm-hmm.
or for the neck bones, then yeah, it would probably have an issue with that. And then also, but I did learn this. So besides that, I learned this about manatees. So manatees actually have probably a spinal placement very similar to ours because they're always kind of looking down at the bottom, eating their seagrass.
Oh.
Yeah, so like when a manatee, so I was like, oh, that's really kind of cool. Where they're not always looking, by our perspectives, always looking up. They're kind
Mm-hmm.
of they're on the same level as us.
Interesting.
Yeah, sea cows,
Sea
manatees.
cows. Uh,
I love the mighty manatee.
yes.
But it is illegal for you to hug them unless I guess if you go to like a special place where they're like, yeah, you legally can hug them here. But
Mm.
otherwise, I think it's like it's really frowned upon.
Um, I feel like it's really frowned upon to hug most wild animals, either by the people around you or by the animal themselves.
Yes, very much so. Or like the time that some people thought a baby buffalo was needing human intervention, so they put a blanket on it and took it into their car at Yellowstone National Park
Why?
because
Why?
they thought it was cold.
People are so stupid.
Worst thing is that buffalo, I'm pretty sure, died
Yeah.
because it wouldn't be accepted. It wasn't accepted back into the herd.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I I'm always curious about that whole going not being part of the herd anymore
yeah.
because it feels like that goes, but it varies from species to species.
Yeah, some animals are less caring about that if you smell like it, but I'm like, in defense of the buffalo, we almost wiped them out. So they they probably have a genetic hatred for humans a little bit.
Yeah. Well, to be fully fair, I mean technically the buffalo we have now aren't even like they're definitely a genetic offshoot of the original bison that we did kill off. So
Yeah, they are yeah, genetic offshoot. Once again, that was also in the book Life as We Made It. Because she's a specialist. She specialized in bison and buffalo, and she actually has a huge part of like how they brought them back because yeah, technically those bison are gone because they kind of interbred them with another herd so that, they're not just super inbred,
yeah.
which is very important.
Yep.
You don't want that to happen. Turns out that's not good.
Really?
Yeah, but I was thinking about this more recently, like when I was talking about if humans didn't weren't able to spread as fast as we did. I mean, like so we spread fairly fast, but then if we didn't have the wheel and we had to actually stay with walking,
Yeah.
um, evolutionarily speaking, we would have probably branched off more.
Yeah.
And it made me think about that. I was like, you need to have a certain level of interbreeding in a very similar like community. Like,
Yeah.
and there's like a certain limit to that. Like, you need to have a certain amount of people to be able to interbreed so that the genetic differences aren't too much, but they are still similar on some level. So that you can reinforce some of these genes and everything else.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's." And this was also don't take that as 100% true, people. That was just something I was just randomly thinking of, and I can't say that is a fact or fiction or whatever. So there's that. Don't take me as that. Oh,
Yeah.
well, this guy said this. It's fine for me to have sex with my cousin.
Yeah.
That's not what I said. Don't do that.
No.
That's what you
For,
just said.
no, he was saying Dean. He was saying second cousin.
Which is legal.
Ah,
And actually, there have been some potential benefits as long as you don't just keep doing it over and over and over, generation after generation. I'm not joking about that one, dude. They actually have there have been studies with that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's shy back away. Back on track.
Yeah, back on track. Yeah, back on track. Back on track. Why does my mom keep calling me? Or texting me? She just keeps bothering me. But yeah, and then the cool thing is then yeah, when I once again I was talking about how they're kind of you insulized everything else, and you keep this group together, then that will also allow you to develop a sense of community and culture based off of similar things, and then you could and that would be actually kind of cool to see. Once again, a purely water based civilization, like how they would change and adapt their particular art styles and everything else, culture. And since these guys would for sure be able to probably communicate vocally as compared to our fish based mermaids, then they could have an actual spoken language. And then that could also be a two-part spoken language too, because think about that, like because potentially if they can be underwater for a very long time and be able to communicate, then they could possibly like it might still be just like a simple one,
Mm-hmm.
but imagine being able to communicate underwater and actually like coordinate to take down prey.
Yeah.
Like well, like kind of like dolphins and whales do,
Yeah.
but like human-esque looking things being able to do that. And that would be kind of cool to basically having you have above water language and a below water language,
Nice. That would be cool.
and it would be just very interesting because yeah, eventually they could develop different types of echolocation because
Mm-hmm.
there are and like I think it was a sea lion that can also do something very similar to echolocation where they like
Okay.
click. And I was like, ooh, that's neat.
Hmm. Nice.
Sadly, I think this might actually be a shorter one.
Yeah. Don't have much otherwise.
Yeah, because that's one of those things too. It's we addressed a lot of this last week with the
Yeah.
mermaid, but so and once again, like I have so much more information that I could use, but that's the problem with this is I have so much information that I could use that I could go down multiple paths,
Yeah. Well, and
and
that's
so
yeah. And that's what kind of makes this one more interesting is because factually speaking, none of these would ever look like Ariel
no,
ever. Because that would be an impossibility in the sense of like the timings would have to be really messed up to get even something even close to that.
yeah, and then also depending how deep they are in the water, why is her hair red? You can't see that
Yeah.
color that deep, like at a certain depth. You can't see that color.
Well, look, you got to make it appealing to our eyes.
Exactly.
Obviously, Ariel is some sort of a siren esque succubus.
Yeah.
She's a demon creature. I mean, look at what we have in the Little Mermaid. We have an octopus mermaid. I mean,
What was it? A cephaly. I think that was a
yes.
name. That was from the October Day novels. They had
Oh,
a creature. That's what they were called, cephaly,
oh, that would
because
make
like
sense.
cephalopod.
Yep. Cephales.
And yeah,
I believe they live in Sepelheim.
wrong mythology.
We're throwing everything out the window right now,
I
okay?
know, I know, I know, but it's
Nothing
more
is
of a I because once again, there's certain things that are stuck in my brain, and I'm like,
yeah.
that's not, and I'm not saying that's
It's
not right, but it's more of a that's this.
oh yeah. Well, it's the only thing that makes I mean, it makes sense that you're not gonna have a mermaid that looks like that.
Yeah, fish thing.
Yeah, you'll never get that. I mean, the closest you'd ever get to almost in that sense, I feel, as far as like close to it, and even that's a little unrealistic, is you'd almost have to have Fishman from The Shape of Water,
Yeah,
and that's as close as it gets to almost being fully humanoid in
yeah,
that sense.
yeah.
And
It. And I still have to see that movie. I want to see
Oh,
wanted to see that
oh,
movie.
you're in for a treat. If you've never seen it, it is amazing. I guess if we're gonna make this super short, there is one thing we haven't talked about, and that is, would the reproduction process still be live birth, or are we gonna be?
I'd say it would probably still be live birth because, like, whales, dolphins, and everything
Yeah,
else have still have live birth.
yeah,
And like I said before, it was like, depending on where it is, that
yeah,
would be it would still be in the same ballpark, again, using that expression in a weird way, as primate
yeah,
reproduction.
because it
But
would be, yeah,
but then, yeah, if depending on where they evolved from, let's say if they didn't have legs, then they wouldn't have to worry about the birth canal in the sense of like hips, like humans. So
mhm,
they could be also more developed because they would have to be then more developed if they're more aquatic based,
yeah,
so that they can just start swimming and be protected and everything else like all other mammals. But then if they are
yeah,
more of the more amphibious, webbed feet, webbed toes, like somewhat land, somewhat, then they could still have a that's animal baby that's underdeveloped because then they can just say, okay, we have like a community system and we have a child care
yeah,
person while we go fish, which
okay,
would also drive a better community bond because then they would be, oh, we all have to work together to do this.
yeah,
And yeah, if they had the time to slowly evolve into something that's more dolphin like, then that could also translate into the bonds like that. Because, like, whales have, killer whales have like pods and dolphins have little things, but they're not
mhm,
as pack oriented as humans, I would say.
yeah.
But I'm also not an expert on dolphins. So I'm like, I might also be
Well, then what's the point of any
completely.
of this?
Yeah, but I was like, I could be also just lying entirely, and well, not lying because I don't know if I'm wrong.
You could
Mistaken.
be, yeah,
I could be
you,
mistaken.
yeah. But it's it's to me it's an interesting concept because obviously again, as you brought up earlier, there are still strangely enough egg-laying mammals out there.
Mhm.
It's not like there aren't exceptions to the rules.
Yeah.
It's just it's just
The
the idea of where it would where and when it could happen cuz
Yeah.
so much of this one it's like you said it's rather unique in the sense of because of how aquatic mammals are, where they decided to, after being on land, deciding to go back to the water is how they basically become an aquatic mammal.
Yeah.
So it's a huge shift from what we've seen in other things.
Yeah.
Because, from a lot of what you said, it's very much like, how do we start in that sense of, because obviously, according to what little bit I understand of evolution, we all started off in the water. We got out of the water at some point,
Mhm.
and then, you know, then dinosaurs. Skip ahead a couple 2, 3, 40 billion years.
Million.
Yeah. Eh. Skip ahead some time.
Yeah.
And then, skip ahead a couple million years. And then, dinosaurs. And then us little guys going around. Then, you know, big event occurs, like
Mhm.
huge extinction level event. And because of where the dinosaurs were in that place, died off.
Mhm.
And again,
Even the big fish-like
yep,
ones died.
yep. And at that point, that's really what makes it all the more interesting is what was left were like the little guys who could survive on less at that point. They didn't need as much and they could have more variety in what they ate, which is why a lot of mammals did survive. We scavenged for so much of what we had. And it's well worth it in that sense of obviously. So, I mean, obviously, that shift couldn't have occurred till after the asteroid. So, we'd only have a certain period of time anyway
Yeah.
to build this whole, water based mammal now.
Mhm.
And it is a crazy concept just to think about the idea of how far we could go with that.
Yeah. Uh, it's yeah, because yeah, it's like if we start as a baseline human that decided I just want to be more towards the water, which we have that example with the sea nomads,
Yeah.
and that's a great example just because like this them starting to do that. They haven't
Yeah.
had they don't have webbed anything,
Yep.
but that notion of that they are starting to
Yep.
physically adapt and everything
Yep.
else internally rather than
Yeah.
externally.
Yeah. And I mean, even there, it's like with the Beijao, where they have that. And that's a question for me then too. Is that how like whales and dolphins are able to maintain staying under the water that long too?
I think so. Something similar to that, where yeah, they have a more efficient circulatory system than ours, so that they can
Mhm.
stay underwater and like
Yeah.
because I was like, what was like the Bajau, they were it in the article talked about like they can have like a heart rate of like 30 beats per minute.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Yeah.
If I get mine down to 65, that's an accomplishment.
Yup. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm extra calm that day.
yeah. There's a I mean, it's it's almost interesting though to even see that difference between humans.
Hmm.
I mean, granted, if the Beijao were to keep going that route, it would still take millions of years for them to even get back and permanently in the water as far as
Yeah.
that goes.
Yeah, it's definitely not like Waterworld.
No. Oh. Man, we should have talked about Waterworld. What were we doing here?
Yeah. I just recently popped in my head about Waterworld, and yeah, it's one of those things too. It's like, no, you couldn't just randomly get gills.
Could you're telling
Behind the
me
ears.
yeah.
That those were gills, yeah.
Yeah, you could not have Gil you're telling me Gilman can't exist?
Not in that way. It just that it just I guess if there was a high enough amount of radiation that was causing a massive amounts of like mutations, maybe I guess.
You'd eventually get Gilman.
Yeah, potentially. But I'm like,
Yeah.
and I guess yeah, since they all the people are constantly exposed to UV radiation because there's no trees to hide under, there's no
Yeah.
building, so therefore maybe they were bombarded by masses amounts of radiation, and those mutations just popped in.
And then Gilman gets created.
Yep. Gilman gets created.
Yeah. I don't know. I
It's
mean,
one
it
of
would
those
be
like it's one of those like I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying kind of unlikely for
okay.
that to
So,
happen that fast.
okay. Well, now that we're on this subject and this buys us some time,
Mhm.
would there would there ever be a species? I mean, I know in the idea of would there be a species that has both a lung and gill?
I the only example we have right now is the lungfish,
Yeah.
and what it is it's it can breathe the air when it's surrounded by like moist mud.
Okay.
So that's the closest we got as an actual example. Because otherwise, like the only thing I can ever think of is like you have gills and lungs somehow.
Yeah.
Where it was like Babylon 5. They had one of the characters. He had gills installed so that he could basically breathe anywhere.
So but again, that's a genetic manipulation. Like
Yeah.
that would be an unnatural genetic manipulation.
Yes.
So that doesn't count either.
Yeah. Because one of those things is like the moment you have something that looks like a fish, why does it need lungs?
It's gonna live in the water.
Yeah, so it wouldn't need to go back and forth. It's the back and forth that you would need to have, but if you're adapted better for land, then it makes sense that you can breathe air. But if you're better adapted to water, then why are you being able to breathe
Yeah.
air as well? So it's like, ugh.
There's very few biological niches that would need you to be both.
Yes, it's
And yeah.
what's jack of all trades. That's the
Yeah.
expression. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, you would never be able to be fully competent. That's not
Yeah.
even the right word. I don't know. I don't know what the word is. What is what
Well,
would?
can I put it this way? Because I think it will help.
Yeah.
Odds are Ariel could never be part of our world.
No, unless magic.
Yeah. And that's the only other assumption. She's a demon succubus. She's a demon succubus siren. But obviously, so I mean, but yeah, because she would have more than likely gills
Yeah.
versus, or even there, like mammals, you know, she would probably be able to hold her, she would probably be able to maintain under the water for a long time, occasionally coming up to just catch a breath, go
Mhm.
back. But
Yeah.
even there, she wouldn't live, most likely she couldn't live on the surface. And even there, she couldn't live on the land part of the surface, most likely, because her bodily makeup wouldn't allow it.
Yeah. She wouldn't be able. She wouldn't have. Oddly enough, it's one of those like things to say. She wouldn't have the upper body strength to probably properly move around on
Mhm.
this land because
Yeah.
you're not doing a lot of push-ups underwater.
Yeah. Yep. Again, let's again, cabin in the woods. Check out them mermaids if you really want to see it.
Yep. And
Say,
that's the best example of like you do not want to see a mermaid if it was actually biologically made sense. You would not want to meet a mermaid.
no,
Even in myths and legends, you don't want to meet a mermaid most of the time.
no, they're
Like
not
they're
cool.
yeah, not that cool.
No,
I
they
just like yeah, look up the story of the Undine or a whole bunch of other stuff. A lot of those things are depressing. Like the one of them that like
yeah.
it was I think it was of the Undine. That one's like it's still depressing as hell, but like it's not like she's murderous. But
Yeah.
basically, it's like a dude kind of tricks her to be his wife
Yep.
and like steals her ability to change back into a fish person.
Mm.
And then one day the kid like helps out mommy and opens up the chest, and then
That's
she runs away.
That's that I know that story. Um, Cartoon Saloon made an animation for it that lost the Oscar that year
Oof.
to Big Hero 6. It's not that good of a movie. I'm sorry, but Song of the Sea was incredible. And Cartoon Saloon loses to Disney because, again, now this is my own tirade. The Oscar committee doesn't understand animation.
Well, no shit.
I know, but
Oscar
still.
Oscar committee doesn't know understand a lot of things.
Yeah.
So where are we with everything here? Are we
Whoa. We're wrapping up.
Yeah, we're
Try
wrapping up. Now we're
I
just like ranting and raving.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Okay.
if you really wanna leave, Dean, we'll close it off and you can leave and Mac and I can talk for like 10 more minutes.
okay?
A Real Creature Feature is created by Matt Kuklinski, starring Matt Kuklinski, Michael Seaman, and Dean Snow. Any questions, comments, artwork, or general inquiries can be sent to realcreaturefeature@gmail.com. You can view any submitted fan art and pictures on our Instagram at A Real Creature Feature. Some episodes were recorded weeks in advance due to our current sporadic recording schedule. Any comments left will be seen and addressed at some point, and you will be credited unless you tell us you wish to remain anonymous. If you like the podcast, please leave a review on the podcast app that works best for you. It really helps us out. Also, tell your friends, enemies, and total strangers about the podcast. They might enjoy it too, and that can bring us all closer together.
What were you saying, Mike? Sorry.
I was gonna say I feel bad for the kiwi because they're in the same family as emus, ostriches, and them, and their eggs are the same size as those animals.
Not
So
tr-
it's you if you see it.
The
I know
egg
it's
takes up the whole entire internal cavity.
Oh,
yeah, I
it's
know
gotta be.
it's huge. Yes, yes, yes. But I'm saying it's probably not the same size as
Well, by size, they lay the largest eggs for
yeah.
their for any species.
Well, they must have found it advantageous.
Don't know don't know how or why. That seems
I don't know how you can walk like that though.
This falls into the koala category of I really think somehow you lucked out of that. You lucked into that, or were very
Now,
unlucky in the genetic lottery.
koalas did not look into anything. They're
Uh.
smooth brains where they just sit in the rain.
Oh, they.
They got those weird two thumbs.
Do you think?
Oh yeah, that
Oh.
is. He showed. Dean shared an image of a kiwi skeleton with the egg inside of its body.
Yeah.
Yep,
I don't
that
know how
big
you
stuff.
can walk like that.
Yeah.
One
You
leg at a
waddle.
time. You waddle. Don't
That
have
is
that many predators, so it's not as scary. I'm assuming. Maybe.
probably, yeah. No,
I would hope so.
I'm shocked you've never seen this before. This is actually to me the.
Yeah, I probably have, but it's one of those things that it just didn't stick.
Between learning about that, between learning about that with the kiwis and the fact that koalas have smooth brains, my entire outlook on evolution has changed.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes you just luck out and it's like, yeah,
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
try and feed a koala by putting eucalyptus leaves onto a plate because it won't know what to do with the eucalyptus leaves.
yeah. Sadly, yeah, I
doesn't
remember learning about that. I was like, oh, that's
it's
really sad.
it
And then
has
their teeth, they're bound to starve to death when they're seniors
yeah.
because their teeth fall out and there's no replacements.
Well, that's true for a lot of animals. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. I don't know if this was true, but I remember learning this as a kid, and it's one of those things that it's stuck in my head. So I don't know if it's true or not. Um, but it was that like Tasmanian devils, you very rarely find old Tasmanian devils because the young just eat them.
Oh,
Once again, I
good.
don't know if that's true. It was just something that's stuck
Yeah.
in my head for since forever. But I was like, well, it makes sense. It's a waste of meat.
Yeah. Well, good for them for using every part of the buffalo,
Yeah,
or in
pretty
this
much.
case, senior citizen.
Yeah. Eat the old.
Oh, they're
That's
gonna be
what
sick.
those shirts say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.